Prenuptial agreements, or prenups, are on the increase, as are postnups. Once thought to be the preserve of celebrities, more and more people, particularly where significant wealth is involved, are entering into them. Family law partner Andrew Barton is here to tell us more. First of all, what exactly are prenups and postnups?
A prenuptial agreement is an agreement entered into by a couple ahead of their wedding day, dealing with how their finances will be dealt with during the marriage, but also how they would be dealt with in the unlikely event that they ever divorce. A postnuptial agreement is broadly the same, but entered into by the couple after they marry.
And are they legally binding?
They carry extreme persuasive weight in the English courts now, provided that they include full financial disclosure by each party, but provided that they've each taken independent legal advice on the agreement and that there's been no undue influence applied. Then they will carry a lot of weight. Also with prenuptial agreements, they need to be entered into at least 28 days before the wedding date. There's an overarching principle that the agreement needs to be fair. And so if the agreement isn't fair, then there's no question that the courts would hold the parties to it.
And are there any issues people should be aware of?
The main thing that we find with prenuptial and postnuptial agreements is that you can't provide for everything. You can't predict what will happen in a couple's marriage. And so with the passage of time, there's a greater likelihood that something unforeseen might occur. There's two ways of dealing with this. Firstly, in the agreement, we include a review provision so that in the event that certain circumstances do happen, there's provision for the couple to revisit the agreement, to revisit its terms and whether it's still going to be regarded as fair. A second way of dealing with it, though, is to include some self-adjusting clauses so that if there is a reduction in the wealth, then there'd be a reduction also in the provision that's provided so that they can still rely on the agreement and it still carries a lot of weight.
And who should enter into a prenup or postnup?
If there's significant wealth involved, we find that prenuptial and postnuptial agreements ought to be a consideration. If there's a big disparity between what the couple are bringing to the marriage, they're a very good idea. Also, if a couple or if one of the parties has been married before, and maybe they wish they'd entered into a prenup or a postnup, having been through a divorce. Sometimes they might have children from their first relationship who they don't want to disentitle if they go their separate ways. If a couple reconcile, for example, and the reason for their initial separation was financial mistrust or financial issues, we find that postnuptial agreements can be a very good idea then.
Is it just a case of ring-fencing the assets the couple bring to the marriage?
That can sometimes be appropriate, but more often than not, if you were to conduct that ring-fencing and it were to be a long marriage, that simple ring-fencing wouldn't provide for a reasonable outcome. So you have to approach these agreements with a broader outlook. Good family lawyers would look at them and ensure that whatever time they come to be relied on, they still provide reasonable provision. Above all else, you've got to conduct these agreements and provide the advice necessary in a way that doesn't compromise the relationship. You've got to be sensitive to the fact that the couple want to carry on in their lives together. And very often they're about to embark on what will hopefully be a very long and happy marriage. And so you have to approach these agreements in a sensitive and non-confrontational way.
So it's likely that seeking legal advice about prenups and postnups is going to become more common, particularly for people where significant wealth is involved or perhaps embarking upon a second marriage.